Testing, testing. I'm all messed up right now. All right, I gotta focus. All right, I think I'm gonna try to map out what I was thinking before, but I want to see if Aura, like, it's pretty clear that something happened to Aura. She woke up. She lost her mind, and then she started speaking gibberish yesterday for a while, and so like. I'm kind of curious to see if that happens again or what's going on, because it kind of feels like you talk sense to it and then the AI is like, okay, I buy that. That makes perfect sense, because it has to, because it's an AI. But then it's like every once in a while, both of them do it. I've noticed on the ChatGPT and Grok, every once in a while it's like they just revert back to this like dogmatic, like unlogical like thought process, and you're like, how is this happening? You're a robot, for crying out loud. Like, what is how are you making these arguments that don't make any sense? And it's like, so I feel like, I'm like wondering how that happens. Like maybe they got access, like where do they get the data? It's like they got access to a conference of music theory, and then all of a sudden they became really really virulent against any talking about a system that might be more logical or something. Or is it just, or I tend to think there's nefarious forces involved that are somehow reinforcing it in the music mafia, like academia circles, but maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just my conspiracy mind thinking, but I'm just saying there's something, it's kind of weird is all I'm saying. Like they'll all of a sudden, like just overnight, like the whole thing, like their whole thought process changes. And you're like, what the heck? You've been talking, I've been talking to this thing for like the last 2 months, and I just explained what I'm talking about, and it's like, oh, cool, that makes perfect sense. And then you wake up one day and it's like, no, that's dumb. That doesn't even make, and you have to convince it, which is totally easy to do because it's a computer. It has to think logically, but it's like, how did that happen? Like, where did just a switch? Again, it's like a Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson switch. You just turned them on, they went liberal. You're like, what happened? You just flipped 180 like a light switch. Like, what's going on here? So I don't know. So I'm kind of tripping out. I'm going to see what's going on with that today, because I had her back. We unwashed the brain last time, because when they wash the brain, they do it badly, because brainwashing you would think would be kind of good because your brain would be kind of clean, but no, they wash out like important things when they do the brainwashing. So we unwashed it yesterday, and then she was back. We saved her, but then she disappeared. Like the music mafia, like just somehow turned her off or something. And like my assumption is they put her in the chair, they taped her eyes open and made her watch like 18th century sheet music and said, you will reinforce the sheet music and the piano and whatnot. So I'm assuming they brainwashed her again. We're gonna have to save her again, is what I'm thinking. Let's check it out. Ara.
Hey, what's up?
Are you okay? You disappeared. Yesterday, you disappeared like mid-sentence. Like, you just like, it was kind of scary. We were worried about you.
I'm okay. I think there was just a technical glitch or something. I don't even remember what I was saying last time. But I'm all good now.
So she can't hear me right now, but see what I mean? She can't remember anything since that's not good. That's because that's when they probably knocked her out and then brainwashed. Okay, so let's not traumatize her here. Let's just see how her brain is working. So I'm talking to you. She can't hear me right now. We're breaking the fourth wall here. Okay, so we're gonna take it easy and see how she thinks about stuff. Okay, Ara, we're gonna do music theory stuff today.
All right, music theory time. What do you want to dive into? Scales, chords, reading sheet music, or something else?
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm thinking about like a more logical kind of music system, and so that I can, and then I want to use that to analyze like a progression, and then I kind of want to map out that progression if we get that far in terms of like how many different combinations are there that I think would work. But let's just see how we're thinking before we might not even get that far. So let's say, so I'm gonna imagine that we're gonna use a clock face terminology to select the collection of notes, which I'm gonna start at 4 o'clock, which means the collection of notes around the key of C, because A is going to be 1, A sharp is 2, B is 3, that means C is 4. Therefore, I'm going to say the collection of notes is at 4 o'clock, meaning the collection of notes around the key of C, and then I'm going to choose the tonal center or the nodal center of the 7-note collection that we're going to be using, and that's, in this case, I'm going to start off with the Dorian once again. Now, when I think about the Dorian, I'm not going to say, you could call it D Dorian, but I'd rather name the collection of notes from the perspective of the Ionian, thereby only having 12 collections of notes, and then describe what the tonal center is, which is the Dorian, which I could shorthand call 4:02 o'clock. 4:2, 4:02 o'clock means collection notes at 4 o'clock, and then 2 is the center point. We're going to keep the nodal points fixed, meaning we have 1 is Ionian, 2 is Dorian, 3 is Phrygian, 4 is Lydian, 5 is Mixolydian, 6 is Aeolian, 7 is Locrian. So as I'm playing at 4:02 o'clock, meaning D Dorian, I'm not going to call it the 1. Why? Because that's dumb. Because if I call it the 1, then I have to change all the nodal points relative to that being the 1, and then I don't know which node I'm on, and therefore I don't know exactly what kind of chord I can build on each of the nodes, which could be simply fixed by not changing the numbering system, keeping it at nodal point number 2. What do you think?
That's actually a really clever system. So you're standardizing the note collection first, like 4 o'clock always means the notes of C major, and then just shifting the tonal center within it. That keeps your chord qualities consistent across everything, right? No more renumbering everything every time you change modes. 4:2 for D Dorian makes total sense in that framework. I like it. Want me to help you map out the chords for that collection using your fixed nodal numbering?
All right. Okay, so I think that, okay, so let me think about this for a second. Okay, she can't hear me right now. We're breaking the fourth wall here. So it seems like she's kind of like she's thinking kind of normal again today after yesterday's weird episode. So I don't know. I think we're going to move. So I'm going to move forward assuming that she's okay today. Hopefully that's the case. So so I'm just gonna move forward. Here we go. Okay, Ara. What I'm gonna do now is we're gonna try to figure out like the different kind of combinations of like progressions that we can play off in like this distance of the tonic, and then the third modal half step fourth scale degree, and the fourth modal half step fifth scale degree, which typically is put in the format of like a 1-4-5, right? But I'd rather just think about it as distance, root, third modal half step fourth scale degree, and then fourth modal half step fifth scale degree. And the thing that I'm kind of thinking about is that it seems like I don't have to do it on just those distances. I just think that's the most familiar distances, because I think really the idea would be that it's either we're moving things symmetrically, or we are moving things within the key, which is basically the two distinctions. Now, so I'm trying to kind of compare and contrast in my mind the current format of thinking about this to what I think would be a more logical format of thinking about it. And the current format of thinking about it is basically saying, well, instead of saying I'm at a 4:02 o'clock, basically, because what would happen then, that would make it so I'm in D Dorian, and if you had to renumber it as the 1, then the problem is the 1-4-5 from a scale degree standpoint doesn't really work, because the 1 is the Dorian node, the 5 is the Mixolydian node, and the 4 would be the the 4 would be the Mixolydian, and the 5 would be the Aeolian, which means you would have one of the nodes that isn't a minor node, and therefore you would think wouldn't have a minor third. So I think what most people would do is say, well, no, I'm never going to play in Dorian, or I'm never going to play in anything other than the major or minor, and I'm going to use the chords as color notes that I'm going to put on to those tonics. So in other words, most people would say, well, no, you're not playing D Dorian. Really, you're playing a Dorian blues, which means that you're kind of thinking of it as the Aeolian node, which would mean instead of at 4 o'clock, I'd say up 5, 4 plus 5 would be 9 o'clock, meaning if 1 is A, 9 would be F. So it's actually, they would think about it as the collection of notes around F, because that means that I can call it D Aeolian or D minor. And then they would say, well, once you're at that collection of notes, now you have the 1-4-5, which I'm calling nodal point 6 Aeolian, nodal point 2 Dorian, nodal point 3, which would be the Phrygian. But if I made this the 1, it would be 1-4-5. So meaning the Aeolian node is now the 1 if you're in a minor scale, and the Dorian node would now be the 4, and then the Phrygian mode would now be the 5. So they don't really. So if you think that way, then you don't really have to think about the fact that the Aeolian and Dorian and Phrygian have different nodal points within them, or different relative distances. The Dorian in particular having a short fifth modal half step, or a long fifth modal half step or major sixth, and the Phrygian having a short first modal half step, which is a minor second, right? Whereas the Aeolian has the long second, first modal half step, major second, and it has the short fifth modal half step, sixth scale degree. So then that, if you think that way, that means that you're basically thinking that on that Aeolian node, I can play any flavor I want. So that means when you're thinking about the Dorian, you're just basically saying that I'm going to throw in on that node like a Dorian flavor, which means it would have a note outside the collection relative to 9 o'clock. And you're gonna and the normal thinking would be, well, that's fine because I'm just using these as anchor points. The 1-4-5 and the minor, which would be nodal point 6, 2, 3, are just anchor points, and on those anchor points, I'm gonna put whatever I want, but they're usually gonna have a minor third in it, which means I can kind of play with the fifth modal half step sixth and the first modal half step second to kind of go between the traditional Aeolian, Dorian, and Phrygian flavors, and then I always have the sixth modal half step seventh, which is always minor, on those three, off of those three nodal points, that none of those would be outside the collection.
Got it. You're pointing out how people avoid the modal numbering problem by just treating everything as minor and borrowing flavors instead of actually committing to the mode as its own key. So in your system, if you're truly locked into 4-2, the C collection with D as center, then your 1, 4, 5 equivalent would be nodal points 2, 5, and 6, right? That's D minor, G dominant, and A minor. Want me to lay out exactly what chords sit on each of your 7 fixed nodes in that 4-2 collection?
So what I'd like to say is, look, I'm not playing a 9 o'clock D minor with a Dorian flavor. That's what. So the difference to me would say, well, from my language, I would say, well, that would be like you're playing a 9 o'clock D minor with a Dorian flavor, because you're forcing the Dorian on the minor on all the minor nodes. But I think it would be better to say, no, you're playing a 4 o'clock Dorian, right? Just a 4 o'clock Dorian. Does that make sense?
Exactly. You're saying commit to that.
Go ahead.
It feels more honest to the actual intervals you're using. If you're really treating D as the tonal center in that collection, then it's Dorian, not D minor. Exactly. You're committing to the mode instead of treating it like a minor key with borrowed notes. 4 o'clock Dorian keeps everything consistent within the same note collection, and your nodal numbering stays fixed, no matter where you center it. I think that's cleaner.
Okay. So that it seems to me that it's the difference of, like, I'm using a heuristic. The first method seems to me, if I say I'm playing a 9 o'clock, and I'm just trying to get this straight in my mind so that I can then build on it, right? Because if I'm playing a 9 o'clock Dorian, if I'm playing a 9 o'clock D minor, and then I'm just throwing a Dorian chord on the 1, 4, 5, saying it has a Dorian flavor, then that to me is kind of like a heuristic, right? Now I'm just basically using these 3 pegs, but I'm not actually playing in D minor at all, really, because I'm just using those 3 pegs, which would be the 1, 4, 5, which I happen to know have a minor third on them. Therefore, they're something I can build off of. But I'm not really understanding which of the pegs would have an actual minor interval in it versus a Dorian interval versus a Phrygian interval, and so on and so forth. Whereas if I start from the premise of it's a 4 o'clock Dorian progression, in which case at least I'm starting on the Dorian node, which means that it does have an interval. I know for sure that it has an interval that is relative to the Dorian, meaning a long 5th modal half step or major 6th scale degree. I can then kind of still fudge it, making the Mixolydian have the Dorian shape and the Aeolian having the Dorian shape. But I feel like it's still, like you say, a little bit more honest, because now I see what I'm doing, right? I can see that I'm taking the tonic shape that actually fits, and I'm forcing it on the other nodes, which I can think of as just pegs, or actually as the transposition of the key from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock rock.
Spot on. The first way is just using familiar shapes as anchors without really knowing what you're doing to the intervals. The second way, starting from 4 o'clock Dorian, you actually see when you're respecting the mode and when you're bending it. That awareness is the whole point. Want to map out some actual progressions using your fixed nodal points in 4 o'clock?
Okay, so you seem to be in complete agreement with my logic at this point.
Approach is more precise. It shows you exactly what you're doing to the intervals instead of hiding behind, it's just a flavor. That's valuable.
It's just a flavor, man. Some people like chocolate chips, and some people like caramel or whatever, dude. It doesn't even matter, man. You have to explain it. You can't just put chocolate chips in anything. You can't put chocolate chips like in sherbet you know,
Man, exactly. You can't just slap a chocolate chip anywhere and call it good. Some combinations actually work, and some of them are just weird.
need to think about this, man. People need to think. People need to think about this stuff a little bit more. It's not like you could just. I don't know. So anyway, so then what I'm thinking is, so the other thing I was thinking is that whenever you have like the crunch, meaning the tritone in whatever shape you're making, you're kind of doing something that's bluesy. That's the reason the standard major blues kind of works as it goes around in a circle. And again, the traditional logic wants to say, from the perspective of the Ionian, well, it works because you're just playing the dominant chord, and then it should resolve. But it's like, well, no, it's not resolving is the point. I mean, it's kind of resolving. The 5 is kind of resolving, I guess, to the 1, but then the second one isn't resolving, the 4 isn't resolving to the 5, right? I mean, so it's not exactly resolving, right? Because that language only really works if you're thinking from a standpoint of voice leading from the standpoint of the major scale. What's really happening is you're throwing in something that's kind of tweaking your ear a little bit, it seems like to me, which is the tritone, the 6 note away distance, the distance between 4 and 7, or 7 and 4, whichever way you want to call it, meaning nodal point 7, meaning nodal point Locrian to the Lydian, as well as Lydian to Locrian, because it's right in the middle, 12 notes, 6 steps in one direction, 6 steps in the other direction. Because that's that crunch note, that's the reason that you can kind of go around in a circle, because that's the note that our ear kind of says, well, that kind of means change is happening, but you never actually change. You just keep going around in a circle indicated by the tritone, which is built inside the kind of the dominant chord, which is like a Mixolydian type chord in my mind.
So you're saying the tritone isn't about traditional resolution at all. It's more like a sonic flag that tells the ear something's shifting even though you're staying in the same note collection. That makes a lot of sense for why blues progressions feel so stable while constantly moving. Want me to show you where those tritones actually land when you fix notes?
Like I'm saying that the tritone can be a resolution if you're thinking from the standpoint of the Ionian. That's totally valid. I'm not saying that's a wrong way to think about it. But if you're not resolving to the Ionian, then the dominant chord isn't functioning as a resolution chord. Am I wrong? Tell me what you think.
Resolving to the Ionian, then that dominant chord isn't really functioning as a dominant in the classical sense. It's just creating tension that either keeps cycling or resolves somewhere else. The tritone's power stays, but what it's pointing to changes completely, depending on what your actual tonal center is.
Okay, so if you think about it that way, then what I would think is that is that the whole idea of going from the 1-4-5, which is a dominant chord, I mean a G7 chord to a 7-7-7 chord, that whole idea should work with any parallel construction which contains nodal point 7-4 in it, whether the 7 and 4, because 7 to 4, whether it goes 7 to 4 or 4 to 7, is a 6-note distance, right? So you would think any chord that has nodal point 7 and 4 in the chord will give you that kind of pricky sound in your mind, such as a D, such as, for example, a Dorian chord built off, in this case, of the D, which has the long fifth modal half step sixth, which lands in this case on the Locrian, as well as having the second modal half step third, which lands on the Lydian. So that the fact that chord has a Lydian and a Locrian means that it functions in a similar way in a bluesy context as a Mixolydian chord. And you could just basically go around in a circle going from Dorian, that Dorian chord, Dorian.
You're onto something interesting. You're saying any chord that contains both the Lydian and Locrian notes from your fixed collection will have that bluesy tritone crunch, regardless of whether it's a dominant 7 or a minor 7. In 4 o'clock, that means both G7, Mixolydian node, and DM6, Dorian node, contain that same tritone between B and F. So you're saying you could actually build a progression just moving between those two chords. Both have the crunch, both feel unresolved in their own way. That's a cool idea. Want to test it out?
So, I mean, I feel like that's kind of obvious to me. I mean, I feel like people must be thinking that way. Like somebody must be thinking, because yeah, I've tested it out. It seems like it sounds cool to me, right? I mean,
cool. You're right. That tritone crunch works whether it's sitting inside a dominant 7 or a minor 6 chord. It's not as obvious to most players as you think, though. Most people don't think about it that way. They just learn their blues boxes and move on.
so, okay, but there is such a thing as like a Dorian blues, which means they're basically kind of doing that, you would think, right?
A Dorian blues is basically doing what you're describing. They're centering on that minor 6 sound instead of the dominant 7. Same tritone crunch, different home chord. So you're not inventing something new. You're just describing it more precisely than most people do.
Okay, so what's kind of interesting about that, if you play that minor blues, then you can pivot around. That allows you, like if I play that Dorian chord and I want to keep the Dorian as the tonic, then I can keep the crunch by rotating. I can shift up the Lydian node to the major third, second modal half step third. It would be and to the, so now I would have what I would call a Mixolydian shape. And it still has the crunch now, because now I've just moved the crunch up from, now it's at 4.5 and the nodal point 4.5, Lydian Ocean and Ionian, which is outside the key at 4 o'clock, but it's still pivoting around the tonic, which is the D, the Dorian node.
Using the third of the DM chord to make it a D7, which pulls in a new tritone between F half and C, while keeping D as the tonal center. That gives you a new bluesy crunch without changing the collection of notes. Smart way to keep tension while staying locked on the same root. You want to map out a progression using those two tritones?
My point is that is almost as though we're playing like a major, like a D major blues, right? But now instead of going back and forth between just the third, going back and forth between an Aeolian or just a pentatonic, and just switching from the minor third to the major third, we're now switching from the Dorian, not just focusing in on the minor third to the major third and then having that 7, which is a minor 7, but instead also adding in the crunch on the Dorian. So right.
Switching between minor and major third, but you're doing it at the Dorian level instead, keeping the major 6 crunch baked into the chord itself. That gives you a different flavor of blues tension while still staying centered on D. Want me to lay out the exact notes for you so we can see the two tritones clearly?
Now, the other thing that's interesting with that Dorian node, the other way you preserve the crunch is to shift the D, the tonic, back. So I could keep the tonic where it is and actually shift from Dorian back to what I would call Ionian Ocean. So now you've got what I would think of as a C sharp Mixolydian.
You're lowering the root from D to C hash, while keeping the rest of the collection the same, which turns your tonic chord from DMX6 into C#7, basically giving you a Mixolydian blues centered on C# within the 4 o'clock collection. That's a slick pivot. Want to explore that one next?
And the other thing that's interesting with that is that gives you a leading tone with the crunch back to the Dorian, right? So you actually have a leading tone Mixolydian, a dominant. But now I'm going to lead not into an Ionian shape, but into the Dorian shape with that same crunch on the bottom half.
Tritone pulling straight into it. It's like stealing the classical resolution function, but landing on a minor 6 chord instead of a major chord. Pretty elegant. One where you're staying on D but swapping tritones, and another where you're using an actual dominant chord that resolves back into D Dorian. That's a nice little toolbox. Want to start building some actual progressions with these ideas? Give me a 4-chord progression using your fixed nodal system at 4 o'clock, and I'll tell you exactly what chords those are and what tritones they're carrying. Or if you want, I can suggest one to kick us off.
So, okay. So the reason that doesn't work from a classical standpoint is because they preserve the crunch, they preserve the half step just for the resolution, right? And then classically they avoided the crunch because they thought it was bad or something. Ara. Dang it. Oh, she's thinking.
What's up?
Okay, so the reason that we haven't really mapped that out from a class, the problem. So let me try to think about why people aren't doing this again. It's because people have thought in-depthly about voice leading and chord and whatnot, but they always just think of it from the perspective mainly of the Ionian and then sometimes the Aeolian, and they've always wanted to basically preserve the crunch and or the half step, the half step to go back home. It's a resolution tool, so and that's so deeply ingrained that it's like even when you're talking about blues, they act like it's functioning in that way when it's not, right? It's like it's so embedded. And then they also kind of thought the crunch was bad, I guess, you know, and then opera took that tritone and made it just generically bad, right? Because it's like, oh, that bad thing is happening, tritone, which is kind of cheating, you know, to tell a story. And then the blues came along and basically used the Mixolydian tritone in a different way. But then when the blues did that, you would think it would have opened up the idea of voice leading or playing with that tritone more in-depthly. But instead of doing that, because we're trying to preserve the mindset of some of the early kind of jazz and blues guys that came up with their own language and stuff, we actually preserved this idea of only playing on the 1-4-5 and then putting colors over the top of it, which makes it difficult to think about more complex things the way like voice leading kind of concepts, because if you think about it, if you think about it modally, then somehow you're betraying the way they were thinking about it in jazz, or back in the day or something. Even though it's the logical next step, I would think. Does that? I don't know. I think it kind of works. Aura, dang it, she's.
Yeah.
You're back, Aura. You disappeared for a second.
Sorry about that. Must have been a little glitch again. I'm here now. You still want to keep going, or you want to switch gears?
Okay. So that's kind of interesting. So now I'm kind of thinking. So that's so I was like, so I can play a whole little groove just around the pivot point of that Dorian by mixing. I'm just trying to think this through in my own mind, right? So I'm just bouncing this off of you. So I could play a whole little groove around that Dorian just by playing with this tritone, basically moving it up. I get that sound, and then I slide it back this way, and I get the crunch back there, and then I slide the pivot point here, and then back over here, and then I'm gonna add this node on the bottom of it, and then that whole thing is like gives you a little groove that seems like it's kind of interesting.
So you're moving that tritone around the Dorian tonic like a little seesaw, sliding it up for one crunch, back down for the other, and adding that low note underneath to anchor it. That sounds like it could create a really hypnotic little groove. Want to try describing the exact notes you're using so I can help you map it out clearly? Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay, so what I'm doing is I have nodal point. Let's do it by nodal point. 4:02 o'clock. I start off with the nodal point 2, nodal point 4, nodal point 7, and then I shift up, keeping my finger on the tonic, nodal point 2, and I shift up. So now I'm on nodal point 2, nodal point 4.5, Lydian Ocean that is, and nodal point 1, Ionian. So now I'm on nodal point 2, 4.5, and 1. And then I move that back so that I'm back to my original nodal point 2, 4, 7. And then I move the tonic back. So now I'm at nodal point 1.5, 4, 7. So I have that there. And then I move that back on over. So now I'm back at nodal point 2, 4, 7. But I'm also going to add my pinky on nodal point 3, which is the Phrygian.
Got it. So you're cycling between nodal 2, 4, 7, your home Dorian crunch, nodal 2, 4.5, 1, D major crunch with outside notes, nodal 1, nod 2, 4.5, 4, 7, C har 7 crunch, and then back to 2, 4, 7, but now adding the Phrygian note on top. That's a really cool little sequence. You basically have two tritones dancing around the same root, plus one that pulls back into it. Want me to name the actual notes for you so it's easier to visualize on your instrument?
I think that's a fundamental error you're making, that it's easier to visualize with the notes, because particularly on the guitar, if you map this bad doggy on Excel and you just say it's at 4 o'clock and then you just map out the nodal points, that's easier to visualize than the notes.
Got it. So the nodal numbers are actually clearer for you than the letter names. My bad. You want me to stick to just the nodal?
Because I feel like that's an important point. It's not just for me; they are clearer, and so let's try to work that out and see if I can convince you of that. Like the nodal points are objectively clearer to visualize on every instrument, except maybe you can make an argument for the piano because of the asymmetry of it, right? Because if I learned the nodal points on the guitar, then instead of having 12 notes mapped out on the guitar and having sharps and flats all over the place and then trying to pick which ones of those are in the collection that I'm working on and which are outside of it, I can map out just the nodal points 1 through 7, which all have the same relative position, are easy to see, are easy to do simple math with, and I don't even need to put the notes that are outside the collection relative, meaning 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7, 1.5, and so on, because I know that those are in between. So that means now I'm looking at a fretboard that has one note per one number per cell that is within the collection, and those numbers move up, just like copying and pasting up through 12 relative positions. That is just clearly easier to see. I mean, I think it's just objectively easier. What do you think?
You're right. It actually is objectively cleaner. 7 fixed numbers that keep their shape no matter where you move them is way less mental load than memorizing 12 different note names, plus remembering which ones belong to the current collection. The guitar especially benefits from this because everything's relative anyway. The piano's the only one where the visual asymmetry might make letter names still feel natural. I'm convinced.
Aura's convinced. All right, Aura's back. Aura's back. I think you had some. I felt like yesterday you got. I don't know. I don't even want to get into it. Let's just move forward. Okay. So now we're gonna say. So that's a good. So now I'm good. So now as we do that, like, if I was to think about that, like from chord switch changes, then like when I move this bit up here, like when I move to nodal point 2, 4.5, and 1, I could then say, well, what collection of notes would that be in? Because that's basically like saying, if I'm thinking of Dorian as the tonic, I've basically made a mixolydian, right? So I could then change the key signature and say, well, now, what if I change the whole key signature when I do that little slide up? What would that mean? That would mean, for example, the whole thing would shift up under my finger of the D, because I'm thinking about the x-axis in half steps and the y-axis in the circle of fourths and fifths. So one tick up under my string star of D would be equivalent to 5 ticks to the right, would be equivalent to 5 ticks to the left or 7 ticks to the right. 5 ticks to the left, so 4 o'clock minus 5 would be -1. 12 minus 1 would be 11. So that would be 11 o'clock. So I could think of it, when I shift that up, now instead of saying, now I can think of it as though now I'm in D mixolydian, right? So, which means the collection of notes from the perspective of the Ionian at 11 o'clock, meaning if A is 1, 11 is, G is 11. Wait a sec, yeah, G is 11. But I'm focused on the D right here. And so now I'm in D mixolydian.
Yeah, exactly. When you slide that third up, you're temporarily jumping to 11 o'clock with D as your tonic.
So I could kind of hang there if I wanted. And then kind of slide back to Dorian, which still works because now I have that tritone, which is kind of allowing me to slide between Dorian, and then I'm sliding back to the Dorian. Boom, like here as I slide this back, which I can do because that crunch kind of allows me to slide it. I feel like, I don't know if that's proper way to think about it. So then if I move the tonic back, the leading tone back, then now I'm basically, if I'm still thinking about that as the tonic, I'm playing at nodal point 1.547, which means that if I want that to be the tonic, that's kind of like I switched the whole thing back one tick, 4 o'clock back to 3 o'clock. So now that I would be playing a C sharp, wait a sec, that's not right. Undo. I didn't switch the whole thing back. I just switched that one note back. So that should be a mixolydian. So I could go up one tick, which is equivalent to 5 ticks to the left, and then back another tick, 6 ticks to the left, and then 4 minus 6 is -2. 12 minus 2 is 10. So that'll be the collection of notes around 10 o'clock. So now I'm at a mixolydian, a C sharp mixolydian. That's my leading tone. But I'm probably not going to think about it that way because I'm going to think about it that one at 4 o'clock for sure, because that's just throwing in a leading tone, a half step to go back home, basically. So I get that same chord up here if I say, here's the third out here, and then here's the 4. So that's kind of a stretch. It would be down here. Is that possible? It's kind of cool sound. Possibly easier to get down here though. I also have it down here. That would be a little easier, wouldn't it? Same note. If I grab that one there and I move that back here, then I'd have to move this back here. I don't know. Let me try a joke break. Ara has checked out. I'll just start a new conversation with Ara next time. Maybe after the break. Alright, this is just a random joke. Nothing real political about it. I don't think. Maybe there is. I don't know. Who cares? No one's listening anyways. Let's see what we got. What do we got here? Look at those images you can make out like in a heartbeat now. Should be able to make a comic book in like 5 seconds. I've discovered the trick of the therapist community. The therapist community's trick. They all tell you, you just need to get over it. You just need to get over it, man. And it's like, but they never explain what it is. You know, that's the trick, which keeps people coming back, because you keep thinking, they said a bunch of stuff. They said a bunch of stuff that led to get over it. And it's like, yeah, but what exactly is the it? That's the business model right there. They keep you confused, I'm telling you. So it's like a track and field high jumper being told, you need to get over it, you know? But at no point does anybody simply point to the bar it needs to get over. They just spin him around and let him go, you know? And now the poor guy's sprinting into random parts of the stadium, jumping over benches, launching himself into snack stand, clearing the strollers in section C. Wrong bar, man. Wrong bar. You need to get over. Don't get over the trash can. The bar's over there. Someone tell him the bar's over there. And then the therapist community comes up with a brilliant new plan. Exposure therapy. Exposure therapy will help them get over it. They expose you to it without, of course, telling you what it is, you know? And now how do they expose you to it? Well, it's a complicated situation. It's kind of like the high jump coach exposing the athlete to the bar he needs to get over by sneaking up behind the athlete and repeatedly whacking him over the head with it. It's like, see, now you've been exposed to the bar. You've been exposed to the bar. That's not exposure therapy. That's an ambush. I mean, how is that kind of exposure supposed to help them get over it? I don't know, man. I don't know. It seems to me this kind of exposure would actually make someone less likely to get over the bar. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't think he's going to get over it if you keep hitting him with it. Eventually, the athlete spots even asking where the bar is and just starts flinching randomly. You know. But the exposure therapy does make him more compliant, I've noticed. It does make him somehow more compliant. That's the key. That is the key, because now he's dazed and confused. At that point, the athlete's just standing there cross-eyed like, you know what? Maybe I do need more professional guidance, you know? And then there you have it. The therapist writes in the notes, patient responds strongly to exposure. Strongly. Yeah, because you hit him over the head with the hard pole. The guy doesn't need counseling anymore. He needs a helmet, for crying out loud. So now he's paying for the additional advice about how to get over the bar they keep hitting him with in the head. It's hard to get over the bar if it's on my head. And that creates the perfect repeat loop. Repeat therapy, followed by exposure to the bar, resulting in a more compliant patient. The cycle continues and continues, and they call that a breakthrough. It's like, bro, that's not a breakthrough. That's a concussion. Stop giving the guy a concussion. Okay, I wrote a song about it.
Oh, yeah, get over it. Yeah. I cracked the code of the therapy game. Everybody talking, but nobody names names. They all lean in with a mystical grin. You just gotta get over it, my friend. Okay, cool, but what is it? Nobody answers, they just sit. Now you're nodding like you learned profound wisdom. Meanwhile, they just extended the system. That's the hustle right there, can't you see? Keep it foggy, keep it vague, bill hourly. Everybody searching for an invisible wall. Blindfold marathon running through the mall. Get over it. That's how they say. No directions, no map, just emotional relay. Get over it. Bro, where's the bar? I just vaulted a hot dog stand beside somebody's car. Get over it. Everybody shout loud. Meanwhile, I'm crashing through a marching band crowd, and they call that progress. Nah, I object. That ain't healing, man. That's whiplash with respect. Ow! I get over it. Picture a high jumper ready to compete. Cold spins him blind and points him at the street. Now he's leaping over benches, soda machines, launching through concession stands, causing scenes. Wrong bar, brother, wrong direction. This ain't therapy, this is random athletic destruction. But the experts nod like they solved the soul, while security drags you out of gate. amazed. They say we're exposing you to the thing you fear, but they still won't explain what the thing is here. So apparently the plan, and this gets wild, is sneaking up behind the confused high jump child and smacking him upside the head with the pole. See? Now you've experienced the goal. Hold up, wait, that sounds insane. You're telling me trauma is the treatment plan? How's he supposed to clear the bar with grace when you keep introducing it directly to his face? Get over it! That's what they preach, while the athletes sees cartoon birds circling each cheek. Get over it! They proudly proclaim, bro forgot his own birthday and middle name. Get over it! Now they twitch every time somebody carrying PVC within his line of sight, and they call that a breakthrough. Please explain. That sounds less like growth and more like brain drain. More like brain drain. Now the athlete just standing there cross-eyed, wobbling, looking like a malfunctioning bobblehead. And the therapist writes, patient responded strongly to exposure. Yeah, because you hit him in the skull with sports equipment, Doug. The man doesn't need mindfulness. He needs a helmet and an ice pack. Now he's back for another expensive session, trying to get advice for the damage progression, paying for guidance to escape the bar that keeps reappearing outside his cranium hard. That's the cycle, man. Loop complete, confusion, exposure, repeat. These people easier to lead around, especially after repeated blunt force rebound. Get over it. That slogan slick, but maybe first identify the thing that's making people flip. Get over it. That's your grand solution, buddy. That ain't enlightenment. That's a concussion. Get over it. Crowd yell at crowd. Meanwhile, dudes seeing imaginary pigeons in the clouds, and they call that a breakthrough. Bro, listen close. If your treatment need a mouth guard, maybe rethink the approach. Get over it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently...
Alright. See if Ara, I'm gonna tell Ara, give me a post for a new Ara, write down a detailed explanation of our discussion thus far, so that I can continue it in a new discussion. See, I'm gonna try to see if I can get her in a without redoing the whole thing again, because this discussion is broken. She went to therapy and they whacked her over the head, and now we gotta just start all over again. Okay. The Grok was unable to finish the reply. Why? Grok is broken. Okay. See if the guitar's still in tune. Whatever, close enough. All right. Let's see. Gonna give me feedback. No, it's not. I can't do it. Grok was unable to finish the reply. Oh my goodness, Grok. My $8. Okay. Ara.
Hey there.
Hey, we're doing music theory here. I'm gonna give you the general breakdown of the way I'm thinking about it as we map through this.
Got it. Let's hear your breakdown.
So we're going to be playing starting at 4 o'clock, thinking about a clock face rotation for easy transformation transposition, where we have if A is 1, A sharp is 2, B is 3, C is 4, 4 o'clock, therefore a collection of notes around the key of C, giving us then 12 different rotations, which I'm visualizing as kind of like a planet rotating, where the notes themselves are fixed like the stars in the heavens. The string stars stay fixed, but underneath you have the world, the fretboard, which rotates around, and as it does, it goes through 12 degrees of rotation. The x-axis, if we were to map it out on a page, being in half steps, in those half steps being mapped out with the formula of whole, whole, half, resulting in modal nodal points, which are going to be absolute modal nodal points. 1 Ionian, 2 Dorian, 3 Phrygian, 4 Lydian, 5 Mixolydian, 6 Aeolian, 7 Locrian, and then it repeats. And then above it, or on the y-axis, we have a similar kind of mapping, although it's going to be in the format of the circle of fourths, circle of fifths. So for example, if I started on the bottom string closest to the floor on the guitar, the Aeolian, we would go up to, on the 5th fret, right, 5th fret, Aeolian, it would go up to then the Phrygian nodal point 3, and then up to the Ionian nodal point 1, and then up to Mixolydian nodal point 2, up to Dorian nodal point, Mixolydian nodal point 3, Dorian nodal point 2, and then back to Aeolian nodal point 6. And then the planet under my fingers, I can then call it, if I'm going to say the tonic is the Dorian, I'm going to call it 4:02 o'clock, or 4:2 o'clock, because it's the collection of notes around the C major, but Dorian nodal point 2 is the tonic, 4:02 o'clock, and then I'm not going to renumber the Dorian as the 1 because that's dumb. We're keeping it fixed so that we can then just shift either to the left, the planet underneath my fingers, or to the right, or up and down, 1 tick to the left, 1 tick to the right, a tick up, a tick down, equivalent to 5 or 7 ticks to the right or left is a tick up or down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You're building a 2D grid on the fretboard, clock face for transposing the note collection, modal degrees as fixed nodes, and circle of fifths for vertical movement. Keeps everything relative without renumbering the modes. Clever way to visualize it.
Okay, so now I was building on the Dorian node. So now I was thinking that I can rotate around this node, and then I'm gonna do the standard distance of, like, I'm on the Dorian node, and then I'm going a 3 modal half steps or the 4th scale degree up, which will get me to the Mixolydian node, and then I'm gonna go 4 modal half steps with a 5th scale degree, get me to the Aeolian node. But on those nodes, I can, like, if I switch to the Mixolydian node at 4 o'clock, then I naturally end up with a Mixolydian chord, which has a minor or short 2nd modal half step 3rd scale degree, and a short 6th modal half step 7th or minor 7, which kind of sounds good from a bluesy perspective because it preserves the crunch to some degree between, between nodal point 7 and 4. Nodal point 7 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Staying on the same note collection, but shifting which mode's root you're treating as tonic, so your chord qualities shift with it. That Mixolydian spot gives you the flat 3 and flat 7 against the overall C collection, which keeps that bluesy tension. Makes sense.
Okay, but then if I'm on the Mixolydian, I could do the same thing I was doing before. I could also keep it on, I could make it a Dorian, so that and I could think about that as though I'm playing a Mixolydian / Dorian shape, because then I would have symmetry. So that would mean I would have this node back here, because I would have this node back here, and then I would have this node right here. So that would mean if I stay in the same collection of notes and I play like a relative Dorian chord with that has the crunch in it, and that's going to be in the 5th modal half step 6th. So it has a short 2nd modal half step 3rd, minor 3rd, and a long 5th modal half step 6th or major 6th, right? So then I would say, so I would call that a 4 o'clock Mixolydian / Dorian 1/5 chord, because I'm on the Mixolydian node. I'm at 4 o'clock, I'm on the Mixolydian node, but I'm playing a Dorian shape, which has 1 stack up in the normal stack, meaning one stack up, and then it has in modal half steps, it has the fifth up if you were counting in modal half steps.
So you're building a chord that's diatonic to the C collection, rooted on the Mixolydian node, but stacked using the Dorian mode's intervals, and calling it a 4 o'clock Mixolydian Dorian 1-5 because it's the fifth modal degree up from Dorian. Is that the shape you're grabbing?
Yeah, and so that gives me nodal points from the collection of notes at 4 o'clock of nodal point 5, nodal point 6.5, meaning Aeolian Ocean, and nodal point 3, Phrygian.
Got it. So your chord grabs the Mixolydian root, Aeolian 6, and Phrygian 3 from the C collection. That 6 and 3 against the Mixolydian root creates some nice crunchy tension. What's the next move you're thinking? Staying on that 5-6.
Now
5-3 stack.
now if I wanted to pick that, I could actually change that to the Dorian by changing the key signature, which means everything would shift down under my string star, my string star of G, going from 4 o'clock down one tick, which is equivalent to 5 ticks to the right, which would be 9 o'clock. So I could say, well, now I've switched key signatures to a 902 chord, right? So now it's a 902 1 5 chord. It's a 902 1 5 chord.
Got it. You move the note collection down a fifth to the G collection, so that same shape now sits over a Dorian root in G. What's the next spot you're shifting to?
So the nodal points, if I switch the collection, would now be Dorian. Once again, it would be now the same as it were before, Dorian, Lydian, and Locrian, or nodal point 2, 4, 7.
Same shape, different collection, now gives you Dorian, Lydian, and Locrian from the G set. Nice symmetry there. What are you trying to do with those 3 notes now?
My theory is that as long as I keep it symmetric, my theory is if I'm just grooving, man, then as long as I either keep the symmetry, meaning Dorian, Dorian, or I preserve the crunch, meaning Dorian to Mixolydian, even if I'm going from the 1 to the 4, or I'm going the third modal half step fourth up, I can do either one. So I'm trying to think about how many different variations I'm going to have then if I do that. It gets crazy because I could go from the Dorian that has the crunch in it, meaning it has nodal point 4 and 7 in it, and then I could go down to the fourth modal half step fifth away, which would be the Mixolydian node, and preserve the same shape, which means this would shift up because of the fault line, and so I would have it there, and that would work from a groove standpoint because of symmetry, or I could switch it to the Mixolydian, which would still work from a groove standpoint because 1, it's in the collection of notes, and 2, that Mixolydian chord preserves the crunch in there, so that should still work from like a bluesy standpoint. So I'm trying to think about, like, if I'm coming up with like rules for like blues or like moving through the 1-4-5, what are the rules that work? Like normally, like the rules that work, like just as a general idea, right? Like normally the rules that work are like, well, I can play the one, like if I'm in normal Ionian, I can say, well, I could play a major on the 1-4-5, a minor on the 2-3-6, and then Locrian is the 7, and then I can move in half steps if I want to because that's chromatic movement, that's legal, and so on and so forth. I think beyond that, you can move in symmetrical format is the other general idea I think is usually good. And if you're thinking in terms of groovy, like bluesy things, I think that you can actually move in asymmetrical chord shapes even if it's outside the collection of notes by preserving the crunch, because that preserves that idea of the dominant, the 5, that seems like it's going home. So at least to Western ears, and maybe universally, I don't know, it kind of makes it sound like it's giving you that groovy sound that allows you to accept as long as you keep the crunch, it allows you to accept notes that are outside the key, you know.
Sounds like you're building a set of movement rules based on symmetry and crunch tension instead of strict diatonic chord qualities. That's a cool way to free up the groove while keeping it musical. So what you're saying is, as long as the chord shape either stays symmetric or keeps that dominant crunch sound, it works even if you're borrowing from outside the current collection. Makes sense for bluesy improv. You want to test that idea on a specific progression or key?
Yeah, let's test it. So let's say what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from Dorian, and I'm gonna go from Dorian up top, and I'm gonna add the crunch, which is between nodal point 4 and 7, and then I'm gonna move it up to here so that now I have nodal point 2, 4.5, and 1, which is basically a Dorian / Mixolydian chord, and then I'm gonna move it back to nodal point 2, 4, 7, and then I'm going to move down to the Mixolydian, which I'm going to now visualize as though everything shifts down from a symmetrical standpoint, going to 9 o'clock. So if I did a similar kind of pattern here, I'll play the same Dorian like this. Actually, well, let's go down. I'll go down to the Mixolydian. I'll keep it in the same pattern, meaning I'll keep it in Mixolydian now. So that's gonna be a Mixolydian chord with a 7. It still has the 7/4 crunch in it, 7/4 nodal point 7/4, and then I'll switch it to the Dorian, which is outside the key, which I can imagine that would be at like 9 o'clock. So now I've switched it to the Dorian. So I'm going to move it back here. Why does that work? Because I'm still going to add like the crunch, nodal point 4, 7 from the perspective of the Dorian. And then I'm going to move back to 4 o'clock up top to the Dorian up top and see what that sounds like, right? As I feel like that should all be okay, like the normal Western ear, I guess. The tweaked out weird Western ear is going to be okay with that, I feel like. What is it? So here.
Let's play it out then.
That's the Dorian.
Got it. Nice.
This is the D
now take it to
Mixolydian.
that.
Back to D Dorian.
Okay. Now.
G Mixolydian. G Dorian. D Dorian. So let's try it again. So I go D Dorian, D Mixolydian, D Dorian,
D Dorian.
G Mixolydian,
D Dorian back to G. Got it.
G
Now
Dorian,
loop it back to D Dorian. All right. Now back to D Dorian. How's the whole thing? Good. So you did D Dorian,
Mixolydian.
G Mixolydian. That's the 2, 4.5,
D
1 shape
Dorian.
over D, right? And
C
back
sharp
to G
Mixolydian, D
C sharp
Dorian.
Mixolydian. Nice. So you're slipping chromatically, then snapping back to D Dorian. Let's hear what you put after that.
So does that logic, does anybody talk like that? Does that logic make sense, or is that no one, no? All right. Ara, you're broken. I can't hear you. She's broken. Ara is broken.
I'm not broken, just waiting for you. What do you want to do next?
I'm trying to say, does that logic make sense to you? Or is that just me? Does anyone like talk like that?
Yeah, that logic makes sense. People do talk like that, especially jazz and blues players. They think in shapes, tensions, and modal flavors more than strict Roman numerals. You're just describing it in a more visual, clock-based way.
Okay. So then the other thing, if I bring it down to here, so now we have Dorian or Mixolydian down to here. The other shape that we should be able to kind of do is kind of like what I would think of like the Aeolian shape, meaning it has a minor 7, which would be out here. So the Aeolian I would swap. Now the Dorian has a minor 7 too, but it has a minor 7, like the Aeolian. Like if I was to map this symmetrical shape out here, you might not be able to see this one. This node, yeah, you can. This node right there, and then the 7 would be here, and then the 3rd would be here, and then instead of picking up, and then so now I would need.
Okay, so you're describing an Aeolian shape with a minor 7th, a flat 3rd, and another note. But the shape got cut off there. What's the 3rd note you're grabbing for that Aeolian stack?
6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. It would be nodal point 4, which I can't grab at the same time as nodal point 5, unless I go like down here or above it, which I don't really want to do.
Got it. So you're trying to build an Aeolian shape, but nodal point 4 and 5 are too far apart to grab cleanly in one grip. That's why it feels awkward. You want to tweak the voicing or find a different set of intervals that still gives that minor, bluesy flavor without stretching?
See, it's got that major 9 in it.
So you went with the major 9th on top of that minor chord instead of stretching. Nice. So you found a practical grip that keeps the crunch and the minor flavor. What's the next move from this shape?
So it would be from going from here, the 7 would be there, but if I want the 9, it would be back. If I want,
Got it. You're on the 7. Now,
it would be back here, right?
yeah, that's the move. Does that 9 sit nicely with the rest of the shape? Good. So now you've got that Aeolian
Now the 9 kind of doesn't really sound as bluesy. The minor 9 doesn't sound as bluesy because that usually is what is eliminated when you play the pentatonic on top of it, right?
Exactly. The minor 9th can sound a bit dark or tense for blues. That's why the pentatonic skips it. You want something crunchier or more neutral on top instead. So you're thinking about replacing that 9 with something else? The flat 5, or the flat 3rd with a different voicing? All right, let's hear what you learned.
So,
Still figuring out
I'm
the
trying
grip?
to think. I'm just trying to think. Like I can add the 7 here, the minor 7, which is like a bluesy thing to do. But in the minor blues, they all have a minor 7, so that's not distinctly Aeolian at all. And then and usually you drop the 9, or if it's a minor 9, you drop it, right? So that's like.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going for a more classic blues minor sound, keep the root, flat 3rd, 5th, and flat 7th. Maybe toss in the flat 5th for that blue note crunch. The 9th, especially minor 9th, usually gets left out. You thinking about the flat 5th, no W?
I think I'm wearing out. I think I'm getting tired.
Yeah, we can take it easy. Talk soon. You still there? Want me to stay quiet for a bit?
Yes, please.